Good Wednesday afternoon, everybody. I'm meteorologist Tim Pandajis here with your Atlantic tropical update. Today we've got two invests to talk about, plus another tropical wave, and we're going to jump over to the Pacific to talk about a typhoon that may be impacting portions of Japan. Today is August 31st, 2022. All right, here's the season by the numbers. 3 areas of interest out in the Atlantic Basin currently. It has been 60 days since a named storm has been present in the basin, since Colin, back on July the 3rd, and it's the last day of August, right? No named storms in the entirety of the month. First time in 25 years, if we go to midnight tonight and don't have a named storm, since we've had an August that failed to produce any storms. That was back in 1997. All right, here's a look at the largest gaps between storms since 1995 and 2022 as of yesterday has climbed to the number 2 spot. If we don't see a named storm today, we are tied for the number 1 spot. And then by the end of this weekend into the weekend, we will hold that number 1 spot for the largest gaps without any named storms. Here's a look at the basin currently a little bit more active. We've got 3 areas of interest to watch. 2 have been tagged as investigative areas, Invest 91L and Invest 93L, both of which have 80% development odds within the next 5 days. Another wave coming off the coast of Africa has got a long while over the open Atlantic, 50% chance in the next 5 days of developing, all of which are well away from any land masses, no imminent threat to any land. Even 91L looks to pass to the northeast of the Leeward-Windward Islands. So that's the good news there. And you can see the average days it takes to reach the U.S. from its current positions. This one 8 to 10 days out. This one's going out into the middle of the Atlantic. No threat there. And this wave is 10 to 12 to 14 days out from reaching the U.S. if it were to do so. So nothing imminent. Let's talk about 91L out there right now. Is looking at it on infrared satellite imagery. We can see the convection, the thunderstorm activity getting a little more concentrated around the center. There's also been some lightning detected near the center. That's an indication of organizing and strengthening of the system. It also looks a little more symmetrical, which is another sign of it getting its act together. Chances there still stand at 60 and 80% odds of developing within 2 or 5 days as it crawls to the west-northwest at around 6 miles per hour. Pressure steady at around 1,008 millibars. All right, here's how it looks on visible satellite imagery. You can certainly see that broad spin. Looks a little bit better than it did yesterday. And as I switch things up and show you the water vapor imagery, very moist in its general vicinity, but it's kind of cornered in by dry air to the northeast and dry air out ahead of it off to the west and even to the north as well. So likelihood of some of that dry air getting ingested into the system, stunting its growth and organization, is a high probable likelihood here. But I don't think it's enough to really impede it from developing, at least farther out in time as it gets farther to the north and west. All right, the atmospheric spin is looking a little more bundled and concentrated than it did yesterday. It's not as elongated and stretched out as it was about 24 hours ago. Another signal that it's getting its act together. It's got overall pretty conducive environmental conditions, the warm ocean waters, wind shear's not all that terribly high, and it's not an it's a very, very moist atmosphere. There's dry air, as you saw, on both sides bookending it, but overall, it's taking advantage of that environmental condition. So where's it going? Where's 91L going? That could potentially be our next named system. Danielle. Well, a little bit better consensus of our computer models compared to yesterday. We had a 1,400 mile spread at the tail end of those. Still a noticeable and notable stretch there, spread, but notice that they're starting to hint about that turn to the north and then looping on out to sea. There's Bermuda, so even a lot of these models keep it to the southeast of Bermuda, which would be good news as it loops out into the open Atlantic. GFS Ensemble, similar, showing these solutions there, kind of all drifting to the north and then eventually taking that turn to the east-northeast after we get out into early next week. So still several days out here in terms of where 91L will go. And as you know, nothing is set in stone. There's a lot of variables and conditions that are very fluid and can change the trajectory of this system as we go forward. All right, so how do the long-range models see things? GFS and European models. Both show it strengthening there. There you are north of the Leeward and Windward Islands by Friday afternoon. And then we continue to strengthen and pull off to the north-northwest. And eventually the GFS strengthens it even more so. Heads to the north. The Euro drops off here, shows it dissipating. GFS loops it out to sea. There's Bermuda there, taking it safely southeast and eventually due east of the island nation there. Let's jump over to our other area of interest, not tagged as an invest currently. It's got moderate odds of developing within the next 2 to 5 days, 40-50% chance there. Switching this up and showing you visible satellite imagery, taking off our projection there. You can see a very broad spin in the atmosphere here. It's a very large tropical wave. It's really got to concentrate that spin and bundle it for it to develop anymore. And its general trajectory is off to the northwest there. Now let's go a little bit farther to the north in the central Atlantic here, central North Atlantic. Invest 93L. This is moving due east, so away from the United States. No threat to any land. Doesn't look to be a threat, at least in the short term as we go forward here. And here's how it looks on infrared imagery. A little bit stretched out there, and what's even a little more evident as we switch up the satellite to show visible, you can see that there is a little bit of some wind shear coming in from the northwest here, and that's exposing the low-level circulation. You can see the low-level cloud deck there and some of the convection being offset off to the east-southeast of that center there. If it can overcome that, then the development odds are high, 80% chance within the next 5 days that this either gets Danielle, or if 91L becomes Danielle, this would become Earl. So we'll have to watch this closely. You can see it's got that general spin. It is bundled and concentrated, but it's just combating that wind shear right now. And even that far north in the Atlantic, water temperatures are plenty warm to support tropical development or even subtropical development. All right, let's compare the models on this. So most of our, in fact, both of our long-range models, GFS and European, hold off on it developing until this weekend. I think that's a little late. I think it'll be a little bit before that, but nonetheless, developing by Saturday. You can see the centers there, and both really intensify this as we head into Labor Day, still in the open Atlantic, not a threat to any land. There's the Azores, there's Europe well off to the east. Heading into the middle to even end of next week, moving due east, strengthening. European model takes it back home into Europe. GFS kind of sits it over to the north of the Azores and meanders there for a little bit into next weekend, September the 10th. So we'll have to watch that carefully, see if it impacts the Azores, or as the Euro shows it, maybe going into Europe as an extratropical or a tropical or subtropical cyclone there, subtropical storm. All right, now I want to jump over to the Pacific and talk about a very strong typhoon, Hinamnor. I think that's how you say it. Don't hold me to it. I'm not quite sure how it's pronounced, but very strong storm here. And this is a 12-hour loop of the infrared satellite imagery. And notice in the last couple frames, you see the very small pinhole eye get replaced by an eye that's actually twice the size. It went through an eyewall replacement cycle. Usually this coincides with a brief weakening of the storm, which is why it's down to 115 miles per hour. It's not a super typhoon at the moment. It's a very strong typhoon. But after the eyewall replacement cycle is completed, it usually leads to a period of strengthening. So we'll watch this closely and look at the track on this as we go forward, dipping south and then turning around and turning north. Here's Taiwan, passing to the east of Taiwan, pushing north to the southern Japanese islands there, south of Okinawa as we get into this weekend. Still 110, 115 mile per hour storm. And it's going to be very much an impactful event there as well. So we'll keep an eye on the Pacific too. So until next time, if you have any questions, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok. My handle there is TimTalkWeather. We'll see you again tomorrow.